Picture the most expensive watch in the world. You're probably imagining solid gold, a dial drowning in diamonds, a tourbillon spinning behind sapphire. Throw that picture out. The most expensive watch ever sold at auction is made of the same stainless steel as a kitchen sink, and it sold for just over $31 million. In the rarest air of this hobby, plain steel and a great story beat gold every single time. Here are the 5 most expensive watches ever sold under the hammer, counting down from number 5 to number 1. By the end, you'll know every price and the one quiet reason behind all of them. This isn't really a story about money. It's a story about what makes serious collectors lose their minds, and it is almost never the gold or the gem count. It's rarity, history, and who wore it. Hold on to that because it explains all 5. Let's start at number 5. Number 5. The F.P. Journe FFC, the Francis Ford Coppola prototype. In December of 2025, at Phillips in New York, this one watch sold for $10.755 million after an 11-minute bidding war. The story starts at Christmas 2009. Coppola's late wife Eleanor gave him an F.P. Journe, and the film director was hooked. A few years later, he invited the watchmaker, Francois-Paul Journe, out to his winery in Napa, and over a long conversation about time and craft, Coppola asked a strange question. Could a watch tell the hour the ancient way, the way people once counted on the fingers of a hand? Journe didn't laugh him out of the room. He went home and built it. The FFC shows the hour with a tiny mechanical hand, articulated fingers that fold and extend to count from 1 up to 12. There is genuinely nothing else like it on a wrist. Now here's why this matters far beyond the celebrity. This became the most expensive watch ever made by an independent watchmaker, and the first independent wristwatch to ever break $10 million. No giant Swiss factory, no marketing army, just one man in a workshop answering a film director's odd idea. The platinum case, the dial, the movement, even the clasp all carry Journe's own signature, and only a tiny handful of FFCs exist, assembled by Francois-Paul himself. That is about as rare as modern watchmaking gets, and the timing of the sale told its own story. Coppola had just poured more than $120 million of his own money into his film Megalopolis, which made back almost nothing at the box office. So the watch that began as pure art quietly went to work paying the bills. Art over money, except this time the art was the money. Number 4. The Patek Philippe Reference 6301A, built for the Only Watch charity auction in 2024. It sold at Christie's in Geneva for around $17.5 million. Now, look at what it actually is. This is a grande and petite sonnerie with a minute repeater, basically a watch that chimes the time out loud, both on demand and on its own, one of the most complicated things Patek makes. And they put it in a plain steel case. The detail everyone outside the hobby misses is this. A complication that serious almost always lives in gold or platinum. Patek built exactly one in steel, gave it a hand-engraved dial under deep blue-green enamel, set 12 baguette diamonds for hour markers, and dropped it into a charity sale. To a serious collector, a one-of-one steel grand complication is pure catnip. It's the rarest possible version of an already rare watch. The pre-sale estimate sat around $1.5 million. It sold for roughly 10 times that, which made it, in that single night, the 4th most expensive watch ever sold at auction. Patek even printed the words "only" and "one" onto the 2 little power reserve dials, a quiet nod to the fact that this watch is the only one of its kind. And the backstory makes it sweeter. A year earlier, Patek pulling its piece had helped sink the entire 2023 edition of Only Watch, which fell apart amid hard questions about where the charity money was going. So this little steel chimer wasn't just a watch, it was Patek walking back into the room and reminding everyone who runs this corner of the world. Every cent went to research into Duchenne muscular dystrophy. The charity room does something strange to prices. When the bidding saves sick kids and feeds your ego at the same time, the number stops behaving like a market. But this wasn't just about one charity night anymore. The obsession with steel runs all the way back to a watch made in the middle of a world war. Number 3. The Patek Philippe Reference 1518 in stainless steel. In November of 2025, at Phillips in Geneva, It sold for $17.6 million. The 1518 was the world's first perpetual calendar chronograph ever produced in a series, back in 1941. A watch that tracks the date correctly through leap years and times a race, all from your wrist. Patek made roughly 280 of them. Almost everyone was gold. Only 4 were ever cased in steel. And this is caseback number 1, the very first, built in 1943 and originally sold in Budapest in 1944. Sit with that for a second. 1943, Europe is at war. Steel is what you build tanks and rifles out of, not what a luxury house wraps around its most advanced movement. Patek didn't even make steel a regular thing until the 1970s. So a steel grand complication from the heart of the war is almost a contradiction in metal, and collectors treat it like a holy relic. And this is the part that should make your jaw drop. This exact watch already sold once before, at this same auction house back in 2016 for about $11 million. At the time, that was a world record. In fact, it was the first wristwatch in history to ever cross 8 figures at auction. 9 years later, it came right back to the same room, sold on a single telephone bid in under 10 minutes, and jumped to $17.6 million. The watch didn't change. The story didn't change. The market simply decided it was worth $6 million more. That result made it the most expensive vintage Patek wristwatch in history. And if you're keeping count, that is 3 steel watches in a row. The pattern is not an accident. Quick thing before the top 2. If you're into watches and you want the honest version, without the hype or the sponsor talking points, subscribe. New breakdowns every week. Alright, the 2 most famous watches on this entire list are next. So far, every watch here has been a Patek or a Journe, sold quietly to anonymous phone bidders. Number 2 is the one watch on this list you could actually picture on a real person's wrist. Number 2, the Rolex Paul Newman Daytona, reference 6239. In October of 2017, at Phillips in New York, it sold for $17.75 million, and it is still the most expensive Rolex ever sold. This is not a watch like the one Paul Newman owned. This is the actual Daytona that Paul Newman owned and wore, nearly every single day for about 15 years. His wife, the actress Joanne Woodward, bought it for him while he was filming a racing movie. She was terrified of how fast he drove, so she had 4 words engraved on the back. "Drive carefully, me." Now, the watch had an unusual dial that Rolex could barely sell at the time, because honestly, buyers thought it was ugly. Newman wore his version constantly. Photographers caught it on his wrist over and over, and collectors slowly started calling that exact dial the Paul Newman dial, the watch named the watch. People forget what happened next. Newman stopped wearing it in the 80s and casually handed it to his daughter's boyfriend, a young guy named James Cox, who kept it in a drawer for decades while it quietly became the most wanted vintage Rolex on Earth. When it finally hit the block, the room held more than 700 people. Bidding opened at $1 million and was sitting at $10 million almost instantly. The final stretch was 2 bidders trading blows for about 12 minutes until it landed at $17.75. It's the only watch on this list that isn't a Patek or a Journe, which makes it the most relatable one here. You don't need to understand a sonnery to understand a wife who was scared her husband would crash. And yet, as famous as that Rolex is, it sold for barely more than half of what's coming next. Number 1, the Patek Philippe Grandmaster Chime, reference 6300A. In November of 2019, at Christie's in Geneva, it sold for $31.19 million, and it is still, by a wide margin, the most expensive watch ever sold at auction. Anything, anywhere. This is the steel watch from the very start of this video. Now think about what nearly $31 million actually bought. Patek's Grandmaster Chime took 7 years and more than 100,000 hours to develop. This piece packs in 20 separate complications. It has a reversible case, so you flip the whole thing over, and there's a second full dial waiting on the back. It has a grande and petite sonnerie, a perpetual calendar, and a minute repeater that chimes through cathedral gongs, the kind that ring long and deep like a church bell. It is arguably the most complicated wristwatch the brand has ever strapped to an arm. And like the others near the top, this one-of-one was made in stainless steel for the Only Watch charity auction, with the proceeds going to muscular dystrophy research. Now here's the number that makes accountants cry. The pre-sale estimate was around $250,000. It sold for roughly 100 times that. That one watch brought in the large majority of everything Only Watch raised that entire year. At $31 million, it nearly doubles the Paul Newman Daytona sitting at number 2. Some collectors will tell you a charity result like this isn't a real market price, and they have a fair point. The bidding in that room was part generosity, part ego, and part the simple knowledge that you would own the most expensive watch on Earth forever. But the watch left that room at $31.19 million, and 7 years later, nobody has come close. The record still stands. One honest caveat before we wrap. Every watch on this list is a wristwatch. Pocket watches play a completely different game. Patek's Henry Graves Super Complication, a pocket watch finished in the 1930s, sold for about $24 million at Sotheby's back in 2014. On price alone, that would slot right near the top of this countdown. And just this past December, Audemars Piguet bought back its own legendary Grand Complication pocket watch, nicknamed the Grosse Pièce, for $7.7 million, a record for that brand. So if we threw pocket watches into the mix, the rankings would shift. But for watches you actually wear on your wrist, these 5 are the kings. So look at the top of this list one more time. The 2 most expensive wristwatches on Earth, and the single most expensive Patek of all time, are made of plain steel. The same metal in your kitchen sink. The real question was never which watch cost the most. It's why a material worth almost nothing turns priceless the moment it's rare and it carries a story. Gold you can always go buy more of. A one-of-one steel Patek from a charity room, or a Rolex with a dead legend's worry engraved on the back, you cannot. If you want the no BS truth about what's actually worth your money in watches, that's what this channel does every week. I'll see you in the next one.